So today let's make the tofu egg patties from the high protein vegan breakfast ebook. This is one of my absolute favorite staple savory meal preps that you can make. I love this recipe. I use this tofu egg constantly. It's such a good meal prep option. You can meal prep a ton of them at the beginning of the week and then just warm them up. You can have it like in breakfast bowls, in sandwiches, on toast, on a bagel. You can have it just as a side with like some steamed veggies. It's basically like any way that you would use eggs. This is it. So I'm gonna use organic coconut milk. This adds a really nice rich creaminess to it. In the cookbook, it does say you can use whatever kind of milk you have on hand. If you have soy milk or oat milk, you can use that instead. However, if you do use coconut milk and you can use up the rest of the can, I definitely recommend doing it with coconut milk because it does add that extra richness to it. And then usually I would use a regular extra firm tofu, which is what is in the cookbook. But I've got a ton of soy recipes coming out this week for my meal prep. So I decided to go with a soy-free tofu today. It'll work exactly the same, except for it's made from fava beans instead of soybeans, and it's really, really high in protein. It's actually higher in protein than regular soy, and it has no fat and no carbs in it. So macro-wise, this is a really great alternative if it's available near you. And then we're going to use a nutritional yeast. This adds like a nice creamy, cheesy kind ofness to it. And then turmeric powder, which adds that nice yellow color that we're looking for from like maybe like a scrambled egg. So to get started, we're just going to cut the tofu into pieces, into the rectangles. You can obviously cut this into circles if you want it as well, if you want it to fit like an English muffin, but by cutting it into rectangles, you just don't have to worry about any like extra bits on the side. So if you are using a regular extra firm tofu brick, as it suggests in the ebook, I would usually say to cut this into 6 pieces, but we're going to cut this into 8 because it is higher in protein than regular tofu. So I'm actually going to get an extra serving out of this. The recipe offers 3 servings, so we're going to cut this so that we actually get 4 servings. So you just want to cut it into rectangles, and then we're going to marinate. So we're going to set that aside and we're going to make our tofu marinade. So I'm going to use 2 separate containers because the containers I have, I'll need to use 2 to get them all flat on the bottom. But basically any container you have that you can fit all of the tofu flat on the bottom would be great. So I'll be using these 2, and then we're just going to make the marinade here. So we're going to open, make sure you always give your coconut milk a shake because it separates. And then we're going to use a 1/4 cup of the full fat coconut milk. Again, you could use like a light coconut milk if preferred. Obviously didn't give that good of a shake. Shake it better than I did. And then we're going to add it to there. Then we're just going to add the 1/8 of a teaspoon of turmeric powder and 1.5 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. Then we're going to use 2 tablespoons of water and salt. Then we're just going to whisk that all together. Now you just whisk until it gets into a nice creamy sauce. You can also add in namak spice, which is like an Indian black salt spice, and it has a really pungent, very eggy flavor if you really want to emulate the flavor of eggs. I personally don't miss the flavor of eggs in and of themselves. I just like the savory breakfast option, so I'm not going to add the namak, but if you do, just add a tiny bit because it's a very strong spice. So now we're just going to separate this. You can see it's kind of nice and thick. That's what using the coconut milk kind of gives it an extra thickness to it. So that's why I like the coconut milk, but use whatever suits you. And we're just going to divide it amongst both of this tofus. Spread it all around. Once you've got a couple spoons on it, you can flip each one and then we'll add the rest. So we're just gonna flip each piece, and then that way everything gets nice and coated. Oops, I accidentally took a full piece off. Should probably use a spoon so you don't actually break your tofu with the fork. The texture of this fava tofu is slightly different than a regular extra firm tofu as well, but the flavor is very nice. Okay, and then we're just going to use up the rest of this to coat it. Now that the tofu is nice and covered in the marinade, every bit has marinade all over it, I'm going to seal these. I'm going to set these in the fridge overnight. Marinating them overnight is best results if you have the time, if you can remember to meal prep it. That's why it's great to do a ton at a time. You could do double this and then marinate it overnight and bake it all off or fry it all off tomorrow. So I'm going to set these aside for the night and then we will cook them up tomorrow. So we're at the next day and I've got the tofu's been marinating all night, and I'm going to do it 2 different ways so I can show you what they both turn out like. I'm going to put some in the oven, put half in the oven to bake it, and I'm going to pan fry half to show you what happens with both methods. Pan fry the other half. I'm going to get this nice and hot before putting the tofu in it. I'm using a non-stick pan. We just finished frying up the pan fried ones. They got nice and golden, nice and kind of crispy around the edges. So I'm just gonna set those aside and wait for the oven ones. So all of them have been cooked. These 4 here were cooked in the oven, and then these 4 here were pan fried. As you can see, there's not much of a difference. I would say the main difference is that the pan fried option is a lot faster. However, if you're meal prepping a bunch and you want to cook them all at once, the oven might be your best bet just because you can lay them all out. You could do double this much on a huge sheet pan. So I know they look like a kind of a basic recipe, but honestly, they're so flavorful, they're so tasty, they go so well on toast or bagels or as a breakfast side to like spinach and some whatever kind of like breakfast bowl you like to make. For every 2, you get about 20 grams of protein and 200 calories, so it's a really good protein to calorie ratio, super flavorful. If you're somebody who really liked eggs before or maybe still do enjoy eggs, this is a great option for you to kind of try something a little different, and it's a great savory breakfast item.